Act 1 of The Weaker Sex by Arthur Wing PINERO. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Persons of the Play.
Ira Lee, read by Tomas Peter.
Lady Vivash, read by Sonia.
Sylvia, her daughter, read by Jenn BrodaDudley
Silchester, read by Adrian StephensMrs.
Mrs. Boyle-Chewton, read by Matea BracicRhoda.
Rhoda, her daughter, read by ashleighjane.
Mr. Bargus, MP, read by Todd.
Lord Gillingham, read by Alan Mapstone.
Lady Gillingham, read by the Story Girl.
Lady Liptrott, read by AvailleHon.
The Honourable George Liptrott, read by GiordanoMr.
Mr. Hawley Hill, read by Andrew Gaunce.
Mrs. Hawley Hill, read by Kelly Taylor.
Mr. Wade Green, read by Linda Olsen
FitakPetch, servant at Mrs. Boyle-Chewton's, read by Dave Currier.
Spencer, servant at Lord Gillingham's, read by David Purdy.
Stage Directions, read by Michael Maggs. The first act, Rights and Wrongs, at Mrs. Boyle-Chewton's, Regent's Park. The second act, The Love That Lives, at Lord Gillingham's, Kensington. The third act, Mother and Daughter, at Mrs. Boyle-Chewton's again. The Weaker Sex. The first act. The scene is in the library in Mrs. Boyle-Chewton's house in Sussex Gardens, Regent's Park, the windows opening onto the garden and giving a view of the ornamental water beyond. The room is handsomely but rather gloomily furnished, and books and newspapers are scattered everywhere, the whole place wearing a busy aspect. On one wall is a large printed poster, as follows: Union of Independent Women. A great public meeting, under the auspices of the Union, will be held at the St. Simon's Hall, Piccadilly, on Monday, May 5th, having for its object a demonstrative assertion of the rights of women to share the privileges and penalties of the other sex in all spheres of life. The chair will be taken at 8 o'clock by Mrs. E. Boyle-Chewton, MLSB. The following speakers will address the meeting: Lady Vivash, Mrs. Anna W. Perkin from Montreal, Mrs. McOstrich, Mrs. Ork, Mrs. Climber Boosby, and Mr. Bargus, MP for Skipping-Molton, who will take the opportunity to declare his adherence to a mighty and irresistible movement. All are invited. Women, bring decent, rational, thinking men. No infants. Mrs. Boyle-Chewton, a woman of about 40, with a not unpleasing face but a rigid personality, her hair worn straight and short, and her costume severe, dowdy, and ungainly, sits writing at one end of a writing table, while at the other her daughter Rhoda, a pretty girl of about 19, dressed in the same fashion, dozes with a pen in her hand, but hidden from her mother by the stationery cabinet. Mrs. Boyle-Chewton, taking up the letter she has been writing and surveying it critically.
I think I make myself understood. Listen, Rhoda. I have thought it expedient to adapt myself to this pugilistic person's phraseology.
Reading.
Mrs. E. Boyle-Chewton accepts the offer of Mr. Robert Saunders of Endell Street, Bloomsbury, to supply her with 4 chuckers out for the great meeting tonight at the St. Simon's Hall. A chucker out, my dear Rhoda, is Mr. Saunders's definition of a person who ejects disorderly characters.
Resuming.
Mrs. Boyle-Chewton does not think 5 shillings a nob at all exorbitant, but must decline the proffered services of Mrs. Robert Saunders, for, while fully grasping Mr. Saunders's assurance that his wife is upon a physical equality with 10 men and a boy, Mrs. Boyle-Chewton doubts whether this particular branch of enterprise should be included in woman's furthest ambitions. Yes. That provides for any fractious opposition, I think.
Enclosing and addressing the letter.
Have you copied the plan of tonight's proceedings?
Impatiently.
Rhoda!
Discovering that Rhoda is asleep.
Good gracious, Rhoda, you're asleep?
Rhoda, waking with a start.
Oh, I must have closed my eyes.
I am ashamed of you.
I beg your pardon, Mamma. It is the heat, I think.
Heat? It will be hotter at the meeting. You've no enthusiasm.
I have been sitting since 8 o'clock this morning. I gobbled my breakfast.
Sumping her chest.
I can feel it here now.
I'm not surprised. You had 4 cutlets. I have been sitting upon 2 eggs.
Rhoda, giving Mrs. Boyle-Chewton a paper.
There, the plans are finished.
Petch, a middle-aged woman-servant, grim and shapeless, enters the room.
Mr. Silchester.
Oh dear, oh dear.
Dudley Silchester, a fashionably dressed, handsome, bearded man of about 40, enters breezily. Dudley, kissing Mrs. Boyle-Chewton.
Good morning, Edith.
Good morning, Brother Dudley.
Dudley, kissing Rhoda.
Well, Rhoda, dear?
Well, Uncle Dud?
Mrs. Boyle-Chewton, giving letter and plan to Petch.
That letter by cab to Endell Street. Lay the paper on the committee room table.
Petch goes out. Dudley, to Rhoda.
You look tired.
Hush.
I dare say we all look tired, Dudley. You know what tonight is?
I think Monday night?
Mrs. Boyle-Chewton, waving her hand towards the bill.
The night of our great meeting.
Dudley, looking at the bill.
Oh, yes, of course. A great meeting. Sorry, an old engagement to play whist at the club will prevent my... It suggests the circus.
I call those names?
Yes, I dare say other people will call them names in the course of the evening.
It will be a monster meeting.
What's that? A meeting of monsters?
Dudley, if you come to my house merely to...
Beg pardon, Edith?
Producing a letter.
I dropped in to show you this.
Mrs. Boyle-Chewton, opening the letter.
Rhoda, your uncle is offered the appointment of consul at Palermo. What a very excellent thing. Through whom?
Lord Gillingham, I fancy.
Ah, Lady Vivash, dear Mary, must have gained his influence for you.
Oh, I'm so glad, Uncle Dud. And so sorry.
£600 a year. That's more than your services are worth, Dudley.
Yes, or ever will be.
Why, you're surely not going to...
Accept it? Certainly not.
Refuse it? When you've never done a real stroke of work in your life?
Never had anybody to work for.
You've had yourself.
Oh, everybody's had me at one time or another. I don't reckon myself.
The epitaph of every wasted career. Why not go to Palermo?
Can't get away just now.
You've nothing to do in London.
That's it. If I had, I should be glad to go to Palermo.
I know. I can read you like a book, Brother Dudley.
I'm sure you can, Sister Edith. The intelligent world has read me like a book for at least the last quarter of a century. It has read me, thumbed me, cut me, yes, cut me, and made brutal marginal notes upon me, until I am the soiled, dog-eared volume, so out of keeping with your immaculate library.
Rhoda, leave me with your uncle for a few moments.
Yes, Mamma.
Have mercy, Edith.
To Rhoda.
Keep within earshot in case I shriek for assistance.
Rhoda goes out into the garden, where for a while she is seen at intervals walking to and fro, reading.
Dudley, you will decline to go to Palermo because you are still hankering after your old sweetheart, Lady Vivash. If I'm wrong, say no.
Dudley reflects for a moment, smilingly looks at Mrs. Boyle-Chewton, and then, without a word, drops into an armchair.
Ah, I thought so. Dudley, of all the extravagant, hopeless passions man ever had for woman, your attachment to my old schoolfellow and present colleague, Mary Vivash, is the most senseless my mind can grasp.
My dear Edith, a respectful affection, which commenced on my side for your schoolmate Mary Norbury, as she then was, about 20 years ago, is hardly deserving of such severe stricture. It has at least the merit of antiquity. Give it as much respect as you would afford an Anglo-Roman tumulus or an ancient Greek coin.
It began most absurdly.
It began by my bringing English toffee to the little pension at Bruges, where you were monitress, and Mary Norbury, a child of 15, was 4th scholar.
I thought it was ridiculous then.
You took your share of that toffee, and oh, what toffee! Life has given me since nothing so sweet as that cooked sugar we portioned out 20 years ago on the side paths of those old canals.
And then, Dudley, after all?
All that toffee, tons of it.
After all, she refused you.
In favour of a brighter, better, cleverer fellow, my friend Philip Lister.
And Philip Lister she quarrelled with, marrying old Lord Vivash a month afterwards in a fit of mad rage.
He's gone, thank goodness.
Yes, and she's had enough of marriage to last her a lifetime.
She hasn't told me that.
My dear brother, even if she did think of marrying again, her mind would go back. To whom, do you imagine?
I thought perhaps to...
To you, fiddlesticks. To her only real love, Philip Lister, whose heart she broke.
Where is he? In heaven, for all we know.
Nonsense, you men don't go there so surely. You see, my dear Dudley, you haven't a ghost of a chance. Besides, your conduct is cruel to me.
My dear Edith.
You know what I have at heart, the advancement of women from the rear to the van.
Dudley, nervously putting on his gloves.
Yes, I think, Edith, before you've explained...
Our recruit, Lady Vivash, supplies the impetus this great movement requires. She is now a strong, self-reliant, fine-minded creature.
She is.
She's still young, brilliant, and enthusiastic.
That's true.
With beauty at the title, which oughtn't to count, but it does.
I should think so.
Since she has thrown her soul with us, we have not only doubled our women supporters, but we are securing fickle, fluctuating, flabby men.
Are you?
And now, when she has taken up her abode under my roof, and is a necessity to our cause, to see you idling here, nursing your old affection like a dilettante with a cracked china jar, it must be most distracting to her, as it is annoying to me.
Cracked jar? You are right, it is cracked. Only the scent of the roses, or the smell of the ginger, or whatever was in it, will linger. Dash it, it will linger.
Lady Vivash, a beautiful woman of about 35, dressed with the most rigid simplicity, but without any sacrifice of grace or dignity, enters quickly from the garden.
At what time is the committee, dear?
Giving her hand pleasantly to Dudley.
How do you do, Mr. Silchester? We are gloriously busy. You have come to scoff, of course.
Committee at 1? There's half an hour yet.
Have any of our ladies arrived?
I think so.
Indeed?
I saw some galoshes in the hall as I came in.
I wear galoshes in the damp weather. Perhaps they are mine.
Perhaps. I didn't know at first whether they were galoshes.
What did you take them for?
Gondolas.
Oh.
Writing busily.
After all, the size of a woman's foot is quite immaterial. A woman doesn't carry her heart in her boots.
She does, if you say boo in the dark.
That's your opinion of women, not mine.
Because you're not a man.
I wish I were, for a month.
I dare say you do. A jolly month you'd have of it.
Dudley!
What I mean, my dear Edith, is that a month would enable dear Lady Vivash to taste the sweets and not the bitters of manhood, to wrench, as it were, the door-knocker of adolescence without paying the 40 shillings of maturity. I have been a grown man for 20 years out of my 40, and the result is that I wish sincerely—
You wish you had been born a woman.
No, a quadruped. A beast is short-lived.
Petch enters.
Mr. Bargus is in the committee room.
Oh, here's Mr. Bargus. Dudley, how fortunate you are. You shall make his acquaintance.
To Petch.
Ask Mr. Bargus to come here.
Petch goes out.
Bargus? Who's Bargus?
You don't read your parliamentary reports, Dudley.
Never.
Mr. Bargus is the new member for the Skipping-Molton Division of Cuddleford. We have secured him.
Secured him? Is he a very violent MP?
He is young, as a politician a mere infant. We have undertaken, as it were, to nurse him, to form his ideas.
Kind of political baby farmers.
As you please. We women need help in the House.
Wouldn't a charwoman?
In the House of Commons. We want a lever to raise the mountain of prejudice. We looked about us, and our eye rested upon— The
member for the Skipping-Molton Division of Cuddleford.
Rhoda enters quickly, thinking Dudley is alone.
Oh, Uncle Dud, here's that ridiculous little Bargus.
Rhoda!
Oh, Mamma!
Ridiculous Bargus? To whom do you allude?
I am afraid I meant Mr. Bargus, Mamma. I have taken rather not a fancy to Mr. Bargus.
Petch announces Mr. Bargus. Bargus enters. He is a chubby little gentleman of about 40, with a foolish face and a large development of forehead, and his fair hair worn in tight little curls all over his head, giving him the appearance of a middle-aged Cupid.
My dear Mr. Bargus, your name was on our lips.
Very gratified.
Are you armed for the fray tonight?
I think so. I rehearsed my speech yesterday to an invalid cousin with most gratifying results. Good morning, Lady Vivash. Good morning, Miss Chewton.
Catching Dudley's eye and bowing.
An enthusiast, I hope?
Mr. Silchester, Mr. Clarence Bargus.
How do you do?
How do you do?
You're nervous about tonight, this big meeting, eh? Funky, just a little?
It's an ordeal. A friend of mine, interested in women, had 2 reticules and a vinaigrette thrown at him last week at Barnchester.
Dabbing his brow with his handkerchief. Lady Vivash to Dudley.
Great head, isn't it?
Big head. One of the biggest I've ever seen.
He's the son of Bargus, the large weaver.
Large weaver? That accounts for it.
Of course he's timid and provincial at present, but he'll float.
That head ought to keep him up. Couldn't you get a more imposing champion?
We have others who are different looking, but Mr. Bargus is all our own.
Joins Mrs. Boyle-Chewton and Bargus.
Oh, I don't want any.
To Rhoda.
So you don't cotton to the political baby, Rhoda?
No. You won't say anything if I tell you something funny about him, will you?
Honour bright.
Do you know that when Mamma and Lady Vivash are not looking, little Bargus, he...
Well?
He does his best to flirt with me.
Oh, the forward infant. I should like to do my best to slap him.
Oh, no, don't. I hate little Bargus, but I'm wretchedly dull here. Nobody ever comes to the house but gentlemanly women and zoological-looking men. Even Bargus is a relief.
Bargus to Lady Vivash and Mrs. Boyle-Chewton.
I have plunged into this great subject of woman after anxious deliberation. I looked about me in the house, and I saw every man metaphorically waving a banner. One member is for everything, another is against everything. One is for opening everything on a Sunday, another is for closing everything always. I said to myself, Bargus, what are you going to do to repay the confidence of 8,570 constituents of the Skipping-Molton Division of Cuddleford? And in answer came the flapping of wings and your voices, ladies, saying, Inscribe the word woman upon your banner, and march forth.
Oh, Mr. Bargus, are you going to say anything like that tonight?
Bargus, dabbing his forehead.
Well, that's a little bit out of what I am going to say tonight.
Rhoda to Dudley, pointing out of window.
Why, look at those Gibson girls out there, playing lawn tennis.
They have spotted noses.
I know, but I envy them to the frocks they wear, the partners that feed them with strawberries and cream, the dances, the theatres, everything. They lead girls' lives.
Tush, your turn will come.
Will it? What about Lady Vivash's child, Sylvia, who is younger than I, and travelling in Italy with Lady Gillingham? Italy, fancy, is her turn to come? Without ever having seen Sylvia Vivash, I detest her.
Hush, she's a mere child.
Which I've never been. I've always been a woman with rights. Oh, Uncle Dudley, I've a big right to be very, very miserable.
Petch enters.
The committee's here. Mrs. McOstrich, Mrs. Boosby, and Mrs. Ock.
Thank you, Petch. Mr. Bargus, pray follow me. Lady Vivash, please. Rhoda, bring the minute book into the committee room.
Petch goes out, then Mrs. Boyle-Chewton. Rhoda is following with an immense book which she has taken from the writing table when Bargus stops her.
Miss Chewton, will you allow me?
Taking the book from her.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Bargus.
May I ask you if you are fond of flowers, Miss Chewton? If so, I should much like...
I'm very fond of them, but Mamma says wearing flowers is frivolous and unhealthy.
Oh, well then, Miss Chewton, if tonight my speech happens to develop some trifling little oratorical blossoms, will you wear them in your memory, Miss Chewton?
Dudley, watching them.
Getting over that nervousness, Mr. Bargus?
Fairly, sir. Thank you.
Thought so.
Bargus goes out, followed by Rhoda. Lady Vivash, who has been looking into the garden, crosses to the door.
Goodbye, Mr. Silchester.
Lady Vivash, will you spare me a moment?
You won't ask me for more, will you?
Dudley, handing her the letter which Mrs. Boyle-Chewton has read.
I think I have to thank you for that.
Lady Vivash, reading the letter.
Oh, the offer of the consulship at Palermo. I am so glad.
Returning him the letter.
I did indeed suggest to Lord Gillingham that if he knew of anything that would
get an idle, troublesome old friend out of your way.
I am sorry I have hurt you, Mr. Silchester.
You do want me to go, then?
I think it would be better for you.
I couldn't go alone.
Isn't Griggs with you still?
My servant, yes. But somehow, when Griggs has brushed my coat and my hat and played with my boot trees for half an hour every morning, there's still a sense of loneliness in life.
She turns away from him, leaning against the mantelpiece.
Mary! Mary!
Lady Vivash, after a pause.
Yes?
Come with me to Palermo.
Thank you very much, but your sister Edith and I are so engrossed in our work here that we can't take a holiday just now.
It isn't part of my suggestion that we should disturb Edith.
I think I must go into the committee room.
Dudley, standing before her, clasping his hands.
Mary, do marry me. I have waited. I am your oldest friend. Make me your newest love. For the sake of your little Sylvia, whom I will cherish as if she were my own, be my wife. For your sake, be my wife. For my sake, be my wife.
I am very sorry, Dudley, but I cannot.
Cannot give up this life you have chosen? Oh, Mary, what a mistake! What a waste!
A mistake, perhaps. I may be too weak a woman, mind and body, to fight the great battle for my sisters. But a waste? No. Why, if I dropped in the effort to raise those who are slighted, ignored, misunderstood, the effort to put upon a conspicuous pillar intellects whose light would illumine the whole world, if I dropped in my struggle to do this, it would be a sacrifice, not a waste.
A woman's only battles should be those of her husband. The intellect she should develop are those of her children. Ah, all you find in this new life is mere buzz and noise, forgetfulness of the wretched years of your mistaken marriage.
Mr. Silchester!
If the task you have undertaken is so fit and so noble, why isn't your daughter Sylvia by your side to share it?
Sylvia, my dear little Sylvia.
Why isn't she under your wing?
I think a young girl needs a different atmosphere. I mean, Lady Gillingham was going to Italy and offered to. I thought it best that Lady Gillingham should. Oh, Sylvia has no troubles to forget.
I am right, then.
And if you are, if what I am searching for is but a sort of intoxication, an oblivion, how could you, with your reminder of the past, help me?
By devoting myself to you, by loving away the memory of your misfortunes.
Lady Vivash, after hiding her face for a moment.
Dudley.
He stands by her side. She looks up to him and takes his hand.
Thank you, dear old friend, but it is so impossible.
Don't you love me at all?
Yes, I do love you, but don't you guess that I can't forget?
Philip Lister?
Philip Lister. Ah, Dudley, brother, if you will be that. It is years ago, but I loved Philip so well. 18 years ago. And oh, the freshness of it all today.
You parted not friends.
A boy and girl quarrel, with the girl in the wrong. He was tender, chivalrous, sensitive. I, wilful, capricious, cruel.
He left England?
I heard so, and then came my sin. Heaven forgive me. Marrying another to spite the man my temper had driven away from me.
You suffered.
I deserved it. Child as I was, I deserved it. But he, so beyond me, why should I have ruined his life? There, Dudley, is the misery that destroys my peace. The news of my marriage must have reached him in some foreign country. I can see it coming to him, without a word of warning, through some newspaper. I can hear his bitter cry of contempt for the girl he had loved. Sometimes I think he must be dead, and I picture him dying, lonely, uncared for. And sometimes I think he lives on, old, broken, a misanthrope, the name of woman the only jest to draw a smile from him.
She turns away, crying.
Ah, so that's your answer, Mary. My old friend Philip still stands between you and me.
Still, always.
Enter Petch with a telegram.
A telegram, please.
Dudley takes it from the salver.
I beg your pardon, Lady Vivash.
Giving the telegram to Lady Vivash, Petch goes out. Lady Vivash reads the telegram.
Oh!
Nothing wrong, I hope?
Wrong? No.
Brushing the tears from her eyes.
Listen. It is from Victoria. You know, Lady Gillingham. It says, "Our letters written to you at San Remo just discovered at the bottom of a trunk. Never posted. We are home. Shall come on to you. Dudley, my Sylvia, my little girl is in London, and I didn't know. Advise me, what shall I do? Shall I go to Lady Gillingham's? I may miss them. They may not be there. I want to see Sylvia so badly."
Stamping her foot.
Dudley, you don't tell me what to do.
Dudley, shaking his head.
Oh, you strong-minded woman.
I'm not. I mean, I haven't seen her for so long.
They're sure to be here almost directly.
What am I to do till almost directly?
There's the committee downstairs.
Oh.
And your speech to prepare for tonight.
I can't think of anything now but Sylvia.
No, and it is from this material that we are to mould our cabinet ministers of the future.
The door opens and Mrs. Boyle-Chewton, Mr. Bargus and Rhoda enter.
My dear Mary, you are forgetting the business of today entirely.
I've had a telegram from Lady Gillingham.
Indeed. The committee think it advisable.
Lady Gillingham and Sylvia are in London.
Very sudden. The committee think that you and Mr. Bargus...
They have been found at the bottom of a trunk.
Lady Gillingham and Sylvia?
No.
Then who has been found at the bottom of a trunk?
Their letters, advising me of their return home.
How careless. The committee...
Never posted. Fancy.
My dear Mary.
Lady Vivash, handing Mrs. Boyle-Chewton the telegram.
There it is.
Mrs. Boyle-Chewton, taking the telegram without reading it.
Thank you. The committee have expressed an opinion.
Oh, do read the telegram.
Mrs. Boyle-Chewton reads the telegram. Lady Vivash, to Rhoda.
You'll be friends with my Sylvia, won't you? Her pet name is Gossamer. She is so light and bright and merry.
Bright and merry?
I've never heard of such negligence.
Returning the telegram.
Women like Lady Gillingham are our stumbling blocks. Oh, for more concrete minds. Mr. Bargus, will you explain to Lady Vivash?
The committee suggests that we compare the salient features of our speeches, Lady Vivash, to avoid a collision of ideas. I shall be delighted.
Lady Vivash, absently as she rereads the telegram.
Quite so. Yes, certainly.
Shall I rapidly float over the surface of my intentions, or will you?
You first, please.
Thank you.
producing a roll of paper.
The question is in a nutshell. The position of woman is a social anomaly.
2 women wouldn't travel all night from Paris to London, would they? Oh, I beg your pardon.
Quite so. I ask, of what is woman capable?
Sleeping at Dover, rising early, and catching the first train to town. That's what they've done.
Pardon me, Lady Vivash. I don't see.
No, of course. I haven't shown it to you, have I?
Handing him the telegram.
Lady Gillingham's telegram.
But this doesn't say anything about the meeting.
You don't read it. We shall meet here.
But the Union of Independent Women.
Oh, don't bother about that.
Enter Petch.
Lady Gillingham and Miss Vivash.
Sylvia! Sylvia!
Bargus retires in astonishment. Sylvia, a pretty, simple, fair-haired girl about 17, dressed very lightly and tastefully, runs on and is clasped in Lady Vivash's arms. Lady Gillingham, a handsomely dressed woman of 33 or thereabouts, with an elegant carriage and pleasing manner, following. Petch goes out.
My dear little gossamer, oh, how pretty you look, my sweet.
Kissing Lady Gillingham.
Victoria, dear, how are you? What a surprise you give me. Lady Gillingham, Sylvia, you have met Mrs. Boyle-Chewton, haven't you? You both know Mr. Silchester. Rhoda, this is Sylvia.
The 2 girls look at each other with curiosity. Sylvia, putting out her hand shyly.
How do you do?
Rhoda takes her hand, then turns to Dudley.
What luck some girls have, Uncle Dud.
Sylvia to Lady Vivash.
Mamma, how strange you all look.
Mrs. Boyle-Chewton, with a heave of resignation.
I think I had better hear Mr. Bargus's plans for tonight. I fancy some of us are not sufficiently sympathetic towards Mr. Bargus.
To Bargus.
Will you walk into the garden? That will enable Lady Vivash to chat over lighter matters with Lady Gillingham.
Mrs. Boyle-Chewton and Bargus go out through the window and are seen at intervals walking up and down and conversing earnestly. Lady Gillingham, quietly to Lady Vivash.
Send Sylvia away. I want to speak to you.
Is anything wrong?
I hope you won't think so.
Rhoda, will you show Sylvia the garden?
Rhoda and Sylvia go towards the window. Sylvia, catching sight of the printed bill.
Oh, what's that? Is Mamma going to sing at a concert?
Lady Vivash, stamping her foot.
Oh!
Dudley to Lady Vivash.
I'll explain nicely.
He follows Rhoda and Sylvia out into the garden.
My dear Mary, I'm afraid you will be very angry with me.
What has happened?
Something very dreadful. Or very pleasant, just as you take it.
Oh, Victoria.
You entrusted dear little Gossamer to my charge, and I need not tell you that I have tried to do my duty.
Yes.
You know, dear, they say love laughs at locksmiths. That he may do, but he certainly ignores chaperones.
Love? What do you mean?
I knew you would be angry, but it is not my fault. Gossamer is in love, dear. There.
Gossamer in love. Gossamer in love. And of course somebody is in love with her.
Oh yes, dear, of course. That happened first.
Who? Who is it?
There, Mary, you've upset me with your first question. Who is it? I suppose from an old-fashioned point of view, I ought to say nobody. But Lord Gillingham says that nowadays everybody with a coat and waistcoat is somebody, especially if he be an American. And this gentleman is an American.
An American?
Yes, from Vermont. But he doesn't, of course, whittle a stick or do those amusing things we read about. Have you ever heard of Ira Lee, the American poet?
I don't know. I dare say I can't remember.
Get him from Moody's, Mary, at once. Gossamer's lover is Ira Lee. We met him in Florence at Mrs. Rock-Savage's. Of course he was smitten with Sylvia. Everyone has been, from a Charing Cross porter to the Pope.
But she...
She was only interested at first, till she read his poetry, and then... Well, get him from Moody's. I heard a portion of his history. Quite romantic. Some time ago, he banished himself out west into the Colorado mountains, leading a sort of camp life with some horribly rough outcast people. Fancy, Mary. A thing I couldn't do. Then he wrote plaintive verses about the wrongs of the Indians and their loves, until an enterprising person came along and bought his poetry, or borrowed it, I forget which, and published it in New York. And there they christened him the Poet of the Prairies. And now he's rich, and I suppose has had enough of the Indians, who are a very untidy race, and he is seeing Europe. There, Mary. What do you think of it all?
Bargus is seen rehearsing his speech to Mrs. Boyle-Chewton outside the window.
Tell me what you have done.
Well, dear, I have done what I consider the very wisest thing. I have done nothing. Mr. Lee gave me to understand that he admired Sylvia. She gave me to understand that she loved Mr. Lee. I said, very well then, we'll go home.
And he?
He said, do, and I'll follow you.
Oh, what shall I do?
See him, dear.
See him?
He's most anxious to do everything in forma. What is it? Not pauperis. Proprietas. In forma proprietas. See him, and accept him or reject him.
Sylvia, Rhoda and Dudley appear outside the window.
Reject him, yes. But Sylvia...
Why, at the worst, it is only a child's first love. Nothing more.
It need be nothing more. Ah, I know what the child's first love means to the grown woman.
Sylvia re-enters the room.
Mamma, won't you?
She stops suddenly, looking into Lady Vivash's face.
Lady Gillingham has been speaking to you about me.
Yes, dear.
I am so sorry, Mamma.
Sorry?
So sorry that Mr. Lee cannot get to London until Wednesday.
Lady Gillingham goes to Rhoda and Dudley outside in the garden. Lady Vivash, drawing Sylvia to her and stroking her head.
Do you really love him, GaunceMrs?
I think I do, really.
And if I told you that it is impossible, absurd, that a child's first foolish fancy is to be checked, laughed at, and forgotten, what then?
Then I should know you were not in earnest.
Not in earnest?
No. Mamma, do you remember once when you were in bitter trouble, taking me upon your lap and telling me of your first love?
GaunceMrs, yes.
Of someone who came to Burgess, painting, just before you left your school, some friend of Mr. Silchester's.
Yes.
He followed you to London. You loved him, Mamma dear. You told me so.
Yes.
But one day, in a fit of jealousy, you sent him away from you, and you never saw him again.
Never again.
But, Sylvia, you said to me, a woman's first love is her religion. If its object be worthy, it will sanctify her whole life. And, Mamma, that is why I know you will let me go on loving Mr. Lee.
My darling, my darling.
With a cry of tenderness, pressing Sylvia to her. Petch enters with a small bundle of letters upon a salver.
Lady Gillingham's carriage.
Lady Gillingham re-entering the room.
Oh, how time flies. Mary, I must catch the 2 o'clock train to Ketterby. I have promised to fetch Lord Gillingham up to town.
Petch giving letters to Dudley, who has come into the room.
Your servant has just brought these letters, sir, in case you might not return home till late.
Thank you.
Petch goes out as Bargus comes in, followed by Mrs. Boyle-Chewton. Lady Gillingham to Lady Vivash.
Do let me take Sylvia with me to Ketterby.
Oh, no, no. We have been so long parted.
My dear Mary, we shall return to town on Wednesday, the day after tomorrow.
In my opinion, on the eve of our great meeting, even the society of her daughter is a most dangerous distraction to Lady Vivash.
I think so too, and I've a delicious plan in my head. On Wednesday night, Lord Gillingham and I have some friends and some music at Kensington. All sorts of dear, nice people. You will come, of course, Mary.
On Wednesday night we have a financial committee.
And if dear Mrs. Boyle-Chewton will dispense with ceremony and bring her daughter?
I shall be glad to carry my opinions and convictions into alien circles. Thank you, Lady Gillingham.
Lady Gillingham to Dudley.
Mr. Silchester, I depend on you too, and...
Mrs. Boyle-Chewton introducing Mr. Bargus.
Lady Gillingham, my friend and associate, Mr. Clarence Bargus, member for the Skipping-Molton Division of Cuddleford.
And perhaps Mr. Bargus?
Mr. Bargus will be very happy.
Very happy, delighted.
To himself, with an eye on Lady Gillingham.
Exceedingly pretty woman. Tush.
I'll send cards to you all tonight.
Quietly to Lady Vivash.
Mary, Mr. Ira Lee will be there. He reaches London on Wednesday morning. Don't you see my scheme? You will be able to survey him before he makes his first advances.
Petch re-enters.
Lady Gillingham's coachman says he can only just get to the station in time.
Oh dear, my husband hasn't seen me for 4 months. He'll think it's so odd if I miss the train.
Kissing Lady Vivash.
Goodbye, Mary. I may have Sylvia, may I not?
Lady Vivash embraces Sylvia passionately.
Goodbye, everybody. Till Wednesday. Goodbye. 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 Sylvia.
Going to the door, Sylvia running after her.
Sylvia.
Sylvia returns to Lady Vivash, who embraces her again.
Gossamer, you won't forget me, your mother, will you?
Oh, Mamma dear.
Lady Gillingham impatiently.
Oh dear, oh dear.
Sylvia going.
Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye.
Lady Gillingham and Sylvia go out, followed by Petch.
And now, if Lady Vivash's mind is quite clear, Mr. Bargus will resume.
The question is, in a nutshell, of what is woman capable? Woman is...
Dudley, who has been opening and reading his letters.
Good heavens!
To Bargus.
I beg your pardon. Allow me 1 moment.
Really, Dudley?
Dudley, softly to Lady Vivash, who has dropped thoughtfully into a chair.
Lady Vivash, Mary, I'm a poor unlucky devil, but I'm not so wrapped up in myself that I can't feel glad at bringing you this good news.
Good news?
Strange news. Philip Lister is living.
Living?
And in England, or will be almost directly.
Handing her a letter.
Look.
Philip's writing.
Read it.
Lady Vivash trying to read the letter.
I can't make it out. Tell me what he says.
She returns the letter. Dudley stands by her side. She sits staring forward eagerly.
It is written from Paris yesterday. My dear Dudley, the dead return to life. I have come into your world again, changed, another man, but still your friend as of old, if you will have it so. I don't quite know the hour of my reaching England, but I do know that I am to burst upon London society next Wednesday night at a party at Lord Gillingham's.
Oh!
Come to me at Stark's Hotel at latest the day following. Philip Lister.
At Lord Gillingham's?
Lady Gillingham didn't mention.
She doesn't know that Philip and I were ever acquainted. Philip, come back.
Come back, yes. I think, Mary, I shall go to Palermo after all.
To Bargus.
I beg your pardon.
Now, Mr. Bargus.
The question is in a nutshell. Of what is woman capable?
Mary, pray listen.
Is this superficial sentiment, which is so popular, called love, to be the only?
Come back. Come back.
Mary!
I can't remain. I am going out.
Going out?
To Madame Lisette's.
To Madame Lisette? Not the dressmaker?
Yes, I must look something like my old self on Wednesday night.
She rushes out. They look after her in consternation. End of Act 1. Act 2 of The Weaker Sex by Arthur Wing Pinero. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The second act. The scene is a richly appointed anteroom at Lord Gillingham's, with a large opening leading to the drawing rooms, and showing a distant conservatory with a fountain playing. On the right is a recess, furnished with settees, palms, and candelabra, over the entrance to which is a curtain fastened back. On the left are large French windows opening into the garden, which is bright with moonlight. There is the sound of music in the distance. Mr. Wade Green is sitting in the corner with his eyes closed. He is a young man with weak eyes, spectacles, and little perky whiskers. When nobody is looking at him, his countenance is most melancholy, but directly he is observed, he assumes a facetious expression. Lady Liptrott, a tall, gaunt, withered woman with a deep, gruff voice and black ringlets, dressed showily but in execrable taste, and the Honourable George Liptrott, her son, an insipid, ultra-modern young gentleman, stroll in from the garden.
George?
Yes, Ma.
We'll sit about in the music room for half an hour and then go on to the Beauchamps. The Gillinghams' entertainments are always so insufferably tiresome.
Yes, it's awfully slow, Ma.
Green, hearing voices, rises, yawns wearily, shakes himself, and emerges from the corner with his most humorous expression.
Harya?
Hiya.
Green loiters away. Lady Liptrott to George.
I know that man's face. Who is he?
Why, Ma, that's Wade Green, the man who's so awfully entertaining at the piano, with those frightfully amusing songs, don't you know? When he sings, it's as much as people can do to keep from laughing.
To Green.
Harya?
Green, stifling a yawn and turning briskly.
Oh, you quite well?
Thanks. You going to sing?
A little thing of last season's.
Oh, then do you go on to the Beauchamp by any chance?
I shall pop in.
Will you sing there?
Yes, a little thing I used to do years ago.
Oh, were you at Mrs. Phillimore's this afternoon?
Yes, very enjoyable.
Did you sing there?
Oh, a little thing they always ask for. One of my old little things.
Ha ha! It will be awful fun when you do something now, won't it?
As Green walks away, he meets Lord Gillingham entering, a handsome old gentleman, slightly deaf.
Ah, Mr. Green, they miss you very much in there.
Green, raising his voice.
Just going in, just going in.
He still loiters about with his hands in his pockets. Lord Gillingham, seeing Lady Liptrott.
You're not going, are you? Lady Gillingham has been looking for you. There's some music in there.
Lady Liptrott, raising her voice.
What a charming night.
Outside?
Here.
So glad.
Lady Liptrott to George.
That man is breaking up.
Rapidly.
Ah, George.
George, raising his voice.
Delighted. You're looking so much better.
Lord Gillingham smiles and nods, but as Lady Liptrott and George go out, he gapes wearily. Green, who is sauntering about aimlessly, does the same. They turn and surprise each other at it. Green, rather embarrassed, resuming his comic manner.
Yes, I'm just going in. Just going in.
He disappears quickly. A servant enters.
Mr. and Mrs. Hawley Hill.
Mr. and Mrs. Hawley Hill, a stout couple, enter, but Lord Gillingham has his back to them and does not notice them.
We can't give them long, Adelaide.
Isn't that Lord Gillingham?
They approach. Lord Gillingham smiling pleasantly.
Oh, you are not going, are you? Lady Gillingham has been looking for you. There's some music in there.
Mrs. Hawley Hill, raising her voice.
Just come.
Eh?
We've just come.
Oh, how do you do, how do you do? Let us find my wife.
He takes them towards the drawing rooms. Servant, announcing.
Mr. Silchester.
Enter Dudley Silchester. Lord Gillingham, to the Hills.
Ah, there she is.
My dear Lady Gillingham.
They go out. Lord Gillingham, seeing Dudley.
Oh, you're not going, are you? Lady Gillingham has been looking for you. There's some music in there.
Just come. How are you?
Ah, how are you? Mr. Silchester, isn't it?
How's Lady Gillingham?
Very well. She's much better than I am at a party. I get dazed. Lady Gillingham is a wonderful woman. I was born too long ago for her. That's my great fault.
Ah.
Yes.
They stand side by side on the hearthrug.
Fine May.
Very, very fine May.
One of the finest Mays I remember.
English Mays.
I mean English Mays.
May is a fine month abroad.
Yes, sometimes.
Ah, I mean sometimes.
They turn their heads from each other and gape.
Is Lister here?
What Leicester is that?
Philip Lister, Gerald Lister's son, went away suddenly years and years ago.
Don't know him.
He wrote to tell me he'd be here tonight.
Oh, very likely, very likely. There are a great many people here I don't know. A friend of my wife's, perhaps. Come along.
Lady Gillingham, richly dressed, enters. shaking hands with Dudley.
How do you do? So pleased.
Surprising Lord Gillingham in the middle of a gape.
Theodore, people are looking for you. You're horrid.
To Dudley.
He leaves everything to me.
I wish he'd leave something to me. I wish I might assist you.
To himself.
Confound it, what a stupid thing to say.
Sylvia enters with the Honourable George Liptrott. She is dressed simply but charmingly in white. She greets Dudley and then strolls with George to the recess.
Ah, do you ever go to Lord's?
Lord's cricket ground? Oh, yes.
Eton and Harrow?
Yes.
Were you there the year before last?
Yes, I was.
Really?
Really?
Then you saw me there. I played for Eton the year before last.
Oh!
Isn't the world absurdly small? The idea of your being there when I was there, both there.
They sit talking. Servant, announcing.
Mrs. Boyle-Chewton, Miss Boyle-Chewton, and Mr. Bargus.
Oh, law, the political infant.
Goes out quickly. Lady Gillingham, in Lord Gillingham's ear.
Here are those people. Mary's friends, the strong-minded ladies, and Mr. Bargus.
Mrs. Boyle-Chewton, Rhoda, and Mr. Bargus enter, the ladies dressed very plainly in sombre silks.
How do you do? How do you do? So delighted.
Introducing.
Lord Gillingham.
To Mrs. Boyle-Chewton.
Is Mary with you?
No. I left Lady Vivash deeply engaged with Madame Lisette, the dressmaker.
Lord Gillingham to Bargus.
Certainly, very interesting. Very interesting.
My lord, it is a great question in a nutshell. The position of woman...
Quite so. Yesterday's paper reported your speech very fully.
Lady Liptrott re-enters and is introduced to Mrs. Boyle-Chewton. Lady Gillingham to Rhoda.
There is Sylvia.
Rhoda goes to Sylvia, who rises to meet her.
Oh, I'm so glad. Has Mamma come?
No.
How late she is. Do sit by me for a moment.
They sit side by side. Rising, George finds Rhoda next to him instead of Sylvia.
I think I'll just, if you don't mind, I'll look for my mother.
To himself.
What a dowdy girl.
Lady Liptrott to George as they meet.
George, look at that extraordinarily dressed person.
Yes, I've just seen another.
Ugh, how women can so disfigure themselves, I can't imagine. Let us retain the soft docility and gentle exterior which are heaven's gifts, or let us die. Give me some air outside.
They go into the garden.
We mustn't miss Bandinelli, the new violinist.
Bargus bobs and bows nervously. Lord Gillingham gallantly escorts Mrs. Boyle-Chewton. Mrs. Boyle-Chewton to Lord Gillingham.
Why don't you become one of us?
Madam, I am all yours.
Join our union?
I haven't thought about it.
Why can't women vote?
Well, they can. They tell the men how to.
Why can't women sit?
They can, can't they?
I mean in the House of Commons. Rhoda?
Yes, Mamma.
Bargus and Lady Gillingham, Lord Gillingham, and Mrs. Boyle-Chewton go into the drawing rooms. Rhoda rises.
I suppose I must go, but I hate it.
Hate it?
I'm not dressed very nicely. People stare so.
Sylvia, putting her arm round her waist.
Shall I come with you?
Rhoda disengages herself. looking at Sylvia's dress and then at her own.
Oh, no, please don't. Besides, you will want to get rid of me directly Mr. Lee arrives.
Mr. Lee! Oh, Rhonda dear, who told you?
Nobody. I heard Lady Vivash telling Mama.
Sylvia, taking Rhoda's hand.
Oh, I'm glad you know, for I do want to talk about him so much. He's dark, you know, and is a poet. They call him the Poet of the Prairies in his own country. He's an American with a soft, low voice. We've only seen each other 3 times in a little bit. We met in Florence. Do you think it's romantic? You can buy his poems at the railway station. They're $1. Look!
Taking from her pocket a little volume bound in red silk.
There they are. I put them in that bright cover. I did say he was dark, didn't I? Oh, aren't I telling you all about him?
You are, rather.
You're not cross, are you? I do hope you'll be engaged soon.
Rhoda, biting her lips.
Do you? Thank you. Perhaps I'm as much engaged as you appear to be.
Oh, I'm so glad. Tell me who it is. Oh, do.
If I choose, it is Mr. Bargus.
Mr. Bargus? Oh, don't.
I don't know why you should make that face. Mr. Bargus is a Member of Parliament. A Member of Parliament ranks higher than a poet.
Oh, I don't think that's a nice thing to say. And Lady Gillingham has told me that there are members and members. Besides, a man isn't born a Member of Parliament. Mr. Lee was born a poet.
Indeed. He had better be going back then. They're doing away with hereditary privileges in this country.
Servant announcing.
Mr. Lee.
Oh!
Ira Lee enters. He is a tall, handsome man of about 37, with a gentle, self-contained manner. Lee, advancing to Sylvia with a pleasant smile.
Miss Vivash?
Sylvia, hanging her head.
Mr. Lee?
Rhoda stares at Lee and then turns to go as Bargus enters.
Miss Chewton? Rhoda? Your mamma has delegated me to fetch you.
Rhoda stares contemptuously at Lee and Sylvia, and, seizing Bargus's arm, goes out with him.
I didn't reach London until 5 o'clock this afternoon.
You must be very weary.
Of being parted from you. Yes. Is Lady Vivash here?
Not yet.
Will she be very angry?
I think she will be a little angry if you stay with me now.
Very well, then. I'll go and find Lady Gillingham.
Taking her hand.
Suppose your mother, for some reason, dislikes me exceedingly.
Oh, don't please. What is there not to like?
So much. Why, look at your little hand in mine. It's like a rosebud on an old Delft plate. I have lived twice as long as you.
You are a poet. You always will. Besides, I think Mama will like you for being rather old. When she married my papa, he was 3 times her age.
No. Was he?
Didn't you know?
Certainly not. You and I have never had time to talk of anything but the future. And the weather.
Oh, you're not curious like women. You could have found out all about Mama, who she was, whom she married, when I was everything. You ought to be curious about me. I have read your poems.
I don't want to know more than that you are sweet and gentle, with a voice that has the meaning of truth in it.
But my mamma.
Oh, I have imagined her. A woman with eyes like yours, only sadder, lips like yours, only paler, a voice like yours, only deeper, a woman whose task in life it is to show her child how to grow old beautifully.
Thank you. Now go and find Lady Gillingham.
He raises her hand to his lips tenderly.
Why shouldn't you show me the way to her?
It is such a little way.
Isn't there a longer way to Lady Gillingham?
Oh, yes, through the garden, only it's much longer.
Take me the much longer way.
They walk a step or two towards the window. He stops and points to the book she still carries.
May I carry that?
Oh,
Handing him the book, which he opens.
do you think me very silly?
I think you ought to be ordered a course of sounder reading.
Write your name there, please.
Lee, hesitating a moment.
My name?
He takes a pencil from his pocket and writes his name, then shows it to her.
Philip Leicester. Who's that?
Ira Lee.
Is Philip Leicester your real name?
It was real to me once.
I don't seem to know you now at all. Philip Leicester.
Ira Lee or Philip Leicester. The man is the same.
Taking her hand and gently drawing it through his arm. Sylvia, to herself.
Philip Leicester.
They walk to the window. The moon shines in upon them. He turns to her.
You trust me, Sylvia?
Philip.
Raising her eyes and looking into his face.
Yes.
They disappear into the garden. As they go, Lady Gillingham enters quickly.
Sylvia! Sylvia! Oh, where is Sylvia? As long as I live, I'll never chaperone another unmarried girl.
Looking into the corner.
Oh, the dreadful responsibility. Sylvia!
Servant, announcing.
Lady Vivash.
Lady Vivash enters quickly. She is magnificently dressed. Her cheeks are bright, her eyes sparkling, her manner hurried and excited.
Mary!
Lady Vivash, kissing her upon the cheek.
Victoria, dear.
Oh, how beautiful you look.
Beautiful? I have never looked so ugly in my whole life.
Nonsense. What will Mrs. Boyle-Chewton say? What a change.
Change, yes.
Since yesterday.
What a change since 18 years ago.
Mary, what is the matter? Come with me.
Is Sylvia well?
Yes, quite well.
Is her American Mr. Lee here?
No, not yet, I think.
Lovers are not impatient nowadays. I am ready.
Suddenly, Lady Vivash supports herself on Lady Gillingham's arm for a moment, then sits faintly.
Mary, you are ill.
No, wait. I have something to say to you. I didn't know that you were acquainted with Mr. Lister.
Mr. Lister?
Philip Lister. I have never told you, but he and I were friends years ago. Tell me, how does he look? Stop. Let me guess. Worn, with silver hair at the temples, eyes that seem looking away, back.
Pointing to the drawing-room.
Is he there? Shall I meet him? Don't notice us. I shall know him. I shall know him. I shall know him.
Mary, I know no Mr. Lister.
He is to be here in your house tonight. I have seen his letter, his own handwriting.
Then he must be somebody Theodore has invited without consulting me. Let us go and ask.
She goes to the drawing-room.
Yes.
Walking straight across to the mirror and looking into it earnestly.
Then and now. Then and now. Oh.
She turns with a low cry and then goes out as Bargus enters with Mrs. Boyle-Chewton from the window, followed by Rhoda. Bargus, nervously, apart to Rhoda.
Go away for 5 minutes.
Rhoda, apart to him.
What are you going to do?
Break the news of our engagement to your dear mamma.
Not here.
Certainly. Your dear mamma can't be violently angry here.
Rhoda goes out.
You say you wish to speak to me, Mr. Bargus.
Mrs. Boyle-Chewton, what I have on my heart Might have kept till tomorrow or next week, but it weighs heavily, and I did not sleep last night for it, so it is better out. The matter is, in a nutshell, Mrs. Boyle-Chewton, I am a bachelor.
You are wedded to our cause, Mr. Bargus.
Politically, of course, a man may be wedded to many causes. Some members are Mormons. Politically, I'm all yours.
We appreciate you.
Thank you. I am sure you do. But domestically, I am all my own. Now, my dear lady, my sentiments concerning this very popular emotion, about which we hear so much, called love, are known to you. Love reminds me of the goose at one of our little county dinners. There it is at the head of the table, rich and tempting, all eyes upon it, and all mouths watering. Every plate is sent up, and the carver, like Cupid, rises to the occasion. And what is the result? Only 2 out of a dozen get a good cut, and before an hour is over, those 2 are extremely sorry for it. But, my dear lady, marriage, 2 persons walking soberly through life under one umbrella, cheerfully accepting the drippings of Providence down the backs of their necks. That's an elevating spectacle.
Really, Mr. Bargus, I don't see...
A moment. It is in a nutshell. Politically, I'm already a member of your charming establishment. Politically, my slippers already nestle at your genial hearth. There's a great deal of trotting to and fro between Regent's Park and myself. Now, Mrs. Boyle-Chewton, I put it humorously, why shouldn't you spare me the journey to the park in the morning, and from the park in the afternoon?
Mr. Bargus!
Take a moment. Take a moment.
It is so sudden. I have never suspected it. All my best friends will accuse me of husband hunting.
They can't. They only say that when the lady concerned is not an extremely attractive creature.
Mrs. Boyle-Chewton, looking away.
Oh, Mr. Bargus!
They can't say that of a charming face and a most fascinating manner.
Mrs. Boyle-Chewton, turning to him warmly.
Be quiet. I am disappointed in you. You don't mean it.
Lady Liptrott and George enter from the garden and cross the room. Mrs. Boyle-Chewton immediately speaks loudly with a change of manner.
The question of the amelioration of the condition of woman, Mr. Bargus, is one that may well profit by the devotion of such great spirits as yourself, not to mention the modest labour...
Lady Liptrott and George go out by door. Mrs. Boyle-Chewton turns again to Bargus.
I have wandered from the point. Go on.
With regard to Rhoda, I fancy I am not obnoxious to her.
Obnoxious indeed.
The event will brighten her life.
I should think so.
Would you care to call me Clarence?
Not yet, not yet.
Not to oblige me?
No, no.
Not to delight me?
Clarence.
Mr. and Mrs. Hawley Hill enter from the drawing-room, cross to the door. Mrs. Boyle-Chewton, loudly.
What future may be in store for woman, it is impossible to estimate or predict. But one great fact is assured, one great fact...
Mr. and Mrs. Hawley Hill disappear.
Clarence, will you speak to Rhoda?
Certainly, tonight. If Mr. Silchester is your escort, Rhoda and I might, follow in a four-wheeler.
I don't think that's necessary.
No, perhaps not. Beg pardon.
And I have still one condition to impose upon you.
100. 100.
Mrs. Boyle-Chewton, pointing to the recess.
Shan't we be less liable to interruption in there?
Shall we?
To himself.
I wish she'd let me get away to Rhoda.
They sit side by side.
Clarence, you will not avail yourself of our new relationship to distract my thoughts from the mighty work of woman's emancipation?
Bargus, edging away nervously.
My dear Mrs. Boyle-Chewton, certainly not. Certainly not. Why should I?
You will not allow your affection for the wife to weaken your cooperation with the agitator?
Bargus, aghast, his eyes starting from his head.
Not allow my I beg your pardon?
You know what I hint at. You won't take me away for our honeymoon till Parliament has risen?
Mrs. Boyle-Chewton.
Dudley and Rhoda come from the drawing-room together.
Hush! Don't kneel!
Rising and looking round the corner.
Dudley!
Oh, are you there, Edith?
Yes!
She approaches them, trying to conceal Bargus, who sinks back. Bargus, to himself, with horror.
I see it. It's all in a nutshell. The mother has taken it to herself. Oh, I've gone into the wrong lobby.
Mrs. Boyle-Chewton, pointing to the recess.
I think Mr. Bargus is there.
Is he?
To himself.
Oh, yes, there's the infant.
Bargus advances falteringly.
How do you do?
Bargus nods, but cannot speak.
Dudley, dear, Rhoda, we three are of one family. I think Mr. Bargus has something to tell you.
Indeed.
Something I hope most interesting to Rhoda, my child.
Oh, Mamma.
Already united to us by ties of sympathy, Mr. Bargus asks that he may be allowed to add one more link to the chain by becoming Rhoda's father.
Rhoda, clenching her hands.
Oh.
Good gracious!
He turns and looks at Rhoda in blank amazement. Bargus, to Mrs. Boyle-Chewton.
He doesn't like it. I can see he doesn't like it. Shall we, for the present, that is, temporarily, you know, a year or two, yield to him?
Doesn't like it? When did I receive sympathy from my brother Dudley? Mr. Bargus, we will take the air before returning to the heated rooms. Your arm. Rhoda, please follow.
She takes Bargus's arm and leads him across to the window. As he passes Rhoda, he gives her a piteous look. His mouth moves without any sound, and he shakes his head violently. She turns from him contemptuously. The three disappear into the garden, leaving Dudley with his hands in his pockets, transfixed.
Good gracious! The infant has grown out of all knowledge. Confound it! Edith ought to have known better. I'll go to the club and drop a line to Bargus. If the babe doesn't listen to reason, I'll choke him with his own coral.
A servant enters.
Here is Mr. Silchester, my lady.
Eh?
Lady Vivash enters. Her manner is now quite composed, but her step is heavy and slow, and her face pale.
Mr. Silchester.
Lady Vivash.
Will you find Sylvia for me? I think she must be in the garden. Her young American must pay the penalty of being late. I am going to take his sweetheart home.
She'll be a little disappointed.
Lady Vivash, to herself.
She knows her lover will call tomorrow. Disappointed. I could teach her what that means.
Sinking wearily into a chair.
You look very tired.
The rooms are hot, or cold, or something. Find Sylvia and let me go.
The servant has drawn the curtains over the window and retired. Dudley is going into the garden. Lady Vivash, calling.
Dudley! Isn't it curious about Mr. Lister?
It is quite a mystery. You saw his letter?
I didn't scrutinize it. I suppose it was his handwriting.
I suppose so. I have it with me.
Taking the letter from his pocket and reading.
Next Wednesday night at a party at Lord Gillingham's. They don't know him. Do you recognize the writing?
Lend me the letter. I'll glance at it when I get home, if I have time.
Certainly.
Giving her the letter, her hand trembling as she takes it.
I shall call at his hotel tomorrow.
You are not looking for Sylvia?
I beg your pardon.
He goes out through the curtains into the garden. Lady Vivash, looking at the letter.
The handwriting? Know it. Oh, Philip, you taught it to me too well years ago. At Lord Gillingham's. He must have written that name for some other. I'll find out tomorrow. Early tomorrow.
She folds the letter, looks round, then touches her lips with the paper and slips it into her bodice.
Where is Sylvia? Why doesn't she come? I can't endure this place now.
She crosses to the curtains and holds them open, looking up.
How bright. It was moonlight when I sent him away from me. What a mockery it is tonight.
She goes through the curtains as Lady Gillingham enters with Ira Lee. At the same moment the servant crosses the room. Lady Gillingham to the servant.
Lady Vivash has not gone, Spencer?
I believe not, m'lady.
The servant goes out. Lady Gillingham to Lee.
I am sure Lady Vivash is most anxious to see you. She must be in the rooms. Wait here. I'll find her and bring her to you.
You are very kind to me, Lady Gillingham.
I am afraid I am. Mr. Lee, lovers are too troublesome.
Lee, taking her hand and bending over it.
Ah, Lady Gillingham, women are too beautiful.
Lady Gillingham smiles and goes out.
Wait here, to be approved of, or otherwise. To have every grey hair in my head counted, every furrow in my face measured, every pound in the bank weighed. After all, a man on the right side of 40 isn't so very old. Not so very old. I am only old for Sylvia. If they don't inspect me quickly, I shall be an octogenarian.
His foot touches a little plain gold bracelet, which is lying upon a tiger skin before the fireplace.
What's that?
Picking it up carelessly.
A bracelet.
He is about to place it on the mantelpiece when he catches sight of an inscription upon it.
Great heaven.
Reading the inscription.
Philip Leicester to Mary Norbury, for ever and ever.
The curtains are pushed aside, and Lady Vivash enters, clasping her wrist.
My bracelet! I have lost my bracelet.
He rises. They come face to face.
Mr. Lister.
Lee, quietly handing the bracelet.
Are you looking for this? I found it on the ground there.
Lady Vivash, taking the bracelet from him and trying to command herself.
Thank you. Mr. Silchester mentioned to me that you were thinking of returning to England after rather a long absence.
Offering her hand.
How do you do?
He takes her hand respectfully and bows without speaking.
I did ask about you early in the evening when I first came, but poor Lord Gillingham was more than usually oblivious. He is much changed. We are all very, very much changed.
Naturally.
I think I should have known you anywhere. You wouldn't, of course, have recognized me if I had not...
Oh yes, don't mistake me. I should indeed.
Their eyes meet. She hangs her head and moves a step or two from him.
Old friends ought to feel interested in one another. Have you prospered abroad? Are you unmarried?
Yes, I am unmarried.
Oh,
Yes, old friends ought to feel interested in one another. Pardon me, have you prospered at home? Are you unmarried?
Don't you know?
Know what?
Of my marriage after you left England.
No. How soon after I left England?
Oh, Philip, don't think more hardly of me than you can help. I was mad. I didn't know what I was doing. Heaven pitied me and gave me strength to do my duty. But you, a man, can't think leniently. I know.
She covers her eyes with her hands. He turns from her respectfully. The curtains move, and Rhoda is about to enter. Seeing Lady Vivash, she stops quickly and draws back, listening, closing the curtains carefully. Lee, after a pause.
You have not told me how soon after I left England.
I can't. I daren't. If you had come back, it would have been different. Why didn't you come back?
Why? Because I was a foolish, sentimental lad with an ideal which you had shattered. Because I was smarting under the charges of unfaithfulness you had brought against me.
False charges. They were false, and I knew it. I tortured you with doubts and accusations for the sake of hearing you tell me how deeply you loved me. I quarrelled for the luxury of reconciliation, stabbed for the sake of healing. And you couldn't comprehend a woman's nature.
No, because I forgot that it was the patrician ladies who cried habete loudest at the Roman circus. I discovered that you had meant to torture me in play, and I left you, from that moment never to glance back. I made a new man of myself, shunning all chances of hearing of you or reading of you, never letting myself even wonder about you. I was unmanly, you say. Well, men have their excuses even for that, if women are unwomanly.
But now we are older, wiser.
Now. Oh, it can't matter to either of us now.
Not matter? Philip, you don't know me. Listen, you must. If you wish it, you shall never see me again after tonight. Tonight, the crossroad of our later life. But hear me before we part. While you were shutting your heart upon me in some faraway spot, my heart was bleeding for you, my eyes ever looking, my ears ever listening for you.
Hush!
I shock you, a married woman. Yes, but one cruelly treated by her husband. A generous husband might have taught me to forget. As it was, my love for you was the light I burned to keep me from stumbling. A little child came. To hush it to sleep, I cried by its cradle the story of my love for you. I prayed for you night and morning. Perhaps my prayers have kept you out of danger.
Hush, Mary.
What have I said?
Lee, taking her hand firmly.
You have said rightly. This is the crossroad of our lives, and we part. Goodbye.
Oh.
It must be. Because, Mary, both of us are not free.
Not free? Not free? Oh, I haven't told you. Philip, yes, I was married, wretchedly married. But now it is past. I am alone again. Oh.
She totters towards him. He recoils.
Mary.
Lord and Lady Gillingham enter with Sylvia, who runs down with a glad cry.
Sylvia!
Oh, I am so glad.
Glad?
Then you know each other.
No. Whom?
Mamma, dear.
Pointing to Lee.
Mr. Ira Lee.
Lee staggers back with a cry. Lady Vivash stands for a moment as if turned to stone. Then Dudley, who has entered from the garden, comes quickly to her and catches her as she is falling. Rhoda, Mrs. Boyle-Chewton, and Mr. Bargus appear in the window as the curtain descends. End of Act 2. Act 3 of The Weaker Sex by Arthur Wing Pinero. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The third act. The scene is the library at Mrs. Boyle-Chewton's, as in the first act, the morning after Lady Gillingham's party. Mrs. Boyle-Chewton enters from the garden with a bundle of flowers, which she surveys sentimentally.
Flowers? I feel I have been a little oblivious of the beauty of flowers. This morning I seem to have learned their language. That little bunch is for me, and that little bunch is for Clarence.
Sylvia enters in a pretty morning dress and garden hat.
Good morning.
How is Mamma?
Oh, almost quite well, and laughing at herself for giving way to the heat last night.
The heat? Then she hasn't told you of the strange...
Stopping in confusion.
Not told me what, dear Mrs. Chewton?
Of the strange sensations in her head.
To herself.
I forgot that Rhoda learned the affair by accident, and that I am supposed to know nothing.
She sits, arranging the flowers as Rhoda enters. Rhoda, sulkily.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, little one.
Rhoda, angrily to herself.
Oh, when I was a child I was treated like a woman. Now I seem to have suddenly become a baby.
She sits at the table and takes up a newspaper. Mrs. Boyle-Chewton hums a tune, at which Rhoda stamps her foot and clutches the paper in a rage. Sylvia looks from one to the other, quite mystified.
Mamma.
To herself.
Mamma never could sing.
Mrs. Boyle-Chewton continues humming unconsciously. Sylvia, quietly to Rhoda.
I am afraid I lost my temper last night and was very unkind. Will you forgive me?
Oh, certainly, of course.
Thank you. And now I'll say what I ought to have said when you told me about Mr. Bargus. I congratulate you with all my heart.
Rhoda, looking towards her mother.
Hush, be quiet.
Don't you want me to congratulate you?
Rhoda, under her breath.
No, there's nothing to congratulate me upon. I mean, how is Lady Vivash this morning?
Quite well. It was only the heat of the room.
The heat of the room? Then you don't know...
Mrs. Boyle-Chewton, who is now listening.
Hush, Rhoda.
Don't know what?
Oh, nothing.
Sylvia, looking from one to the other.
Oh, I am afraid there is something you are keeping from me. You don't think Mamma is really ill, do you? You would tell me if you thought so.
Of course. Lady Vivash is in most excellent health. Why, look at her.
Lady Vivash enters. Her face is pale, but otherwise she is quite herself.
Good morning.
Good morning. We are so glad you are better, Mary.
Thank you. Till last night I had not fainted for years. It was very foolish of me. Did you feel the heat?
No, not particularly.
Did you, Rhoda?
Rhoda, with meaning, eyeing Lady Vivash.
No, I was outside the room in which you fainted. Outside, by the window.
By the window? Oh, of course it was cooler there.
Yes, much cooler.
Lady Vivash, to herself.
She couldn't have heard.
Mamma dear, come into the garden and watch for Mr. Lee.
Mr. Lee?
He said he would be here very early in the morning. He was so anxious about you. Do come.
For a few minutes, darling. I must be very busy today.
To Mrs. Boyle-Chewton, as Sylvia runs up to the window.
Edith, dear, what with Sylvia's return and the party last night and one thing and another, I have neglected the work which is so near to your heart and mine. But my mind shall never wander again, dear. Forgive me, and let us make up for lost time today.
I don't feel very much inclined for work today.
You not inclined to work?
No.
But we have a finance committee at 4 o'clock.
Oh, bother the finance committee.
Edith?
Dudley enters quickly.
Good morning. I'm a little early, Edith, but the fact is...
You are fortunate. By being early, you stand a chance of meeting Clarence, Mr. Bargus. I'm on the lookout for him.
Going to the window and looking out. Dudley, to himself.
Oh, if she knew only that the infant is now on the premises, waiting to tell her of the dreadful mistake he has made. Phew! And there she is, on the lookout for him. How can I break it?
Lady Vivash comes to Dudley's side.
Dudley.
Are you better?
Quite well. Dudley, Ira Lee, Philip Lister is coming here this morning. I have thought over everything and I have decided. Dudley, the knowledge that he was once my lover must be kept from Sylvia.
But, my dear Mary...
Oh, where would be the good? It was years and years ago and is done with. The secret is quite our own. She loves him dearly. I know him to be a good man. Would you set me, her mother, up between them? Oh, it would be cruel.
But is he sure his old affection is quite extinct, with a decent, respectable, and heavy monument upon it?
Sure, my Sylvia is what I was. Of course he loves her.
And you, Mary, Sylvia's mother?
She starts and trembles, and her eyes droop for a moment.
I love only Sylvia.
She joins Sylvia at the window. Mrs. Boyle-Chewton, looking at the clock.
Rhoda, didn't Mr. Bargus say he would be here at 10 o'clock?
Oh, my dear Edith, that reminds me, Mr. Bargus is here.
Here? And I not informed?
Well, the fact is, my dear Edith, he's sitting in the committee room.
Sitting in the committee room? He can't be a committee all by himself.
No, he realizes that. He will be all right in a minute.
He is not well. I see it in your expression. Mr. Bargus is indisposed.
Well, yes, that's it. Bargus is a little indisposed.
Oh.
He came to me very early this morning, before I was up, in fact, to make some explanations, and having had a bad night, he asked me to bring him along.
A bad night? Oh dear.
She rings the bell.
Stop, Edith. I fancy he wishes to see you alone.
Of course he does, but I must present him to Mary in his proper light. Mary!
No. I've something to tell you.
I will have no secrets. Mr. Bargus and I have nothing to be ashamed of.
Yes, you have. I mean, he has. Oh, wait.
Wait. I ought to have told Mary the first thing this morning. Mary!
Oh, here it goes.
Mary, you will be surprised to hear that Mr. Bargus and I are engaged to be married.
Edith!
Oh, Rhonda.
Rhoda turns away with a cry of rage.
It will take Mr. Bargus's eloquent tongue to tell you our reasons for changing our condition. But the cause, dear Mary, the great cause shall not suffer.
Petch enters.
Petch, Mr. Bargus is in the committee room. Beg him to come here.
Petch goes out. Dudley, to himself.
Poor devil, what a muddle I've made of it.
My dear Edith.
Kissing her.
I hope you will be very happy.
And so do I, dear Mrs. Chewton, indeed. Oh, Rhonda has been having such fun with me.
Oh,
Yes, Rhonda told me last night that Mr. Bargus...
Miss Vivash.
Rhoda goes out into the garden as Petch enters.
Mr. Bargus.
Bargus enters. He is pale and dejected, with a wild look in his eyes, and his appearance generally disordered. Petch goes out.
Oh, good morning.
Mr. Bargus, I have just heard some news which gives me very great pleasure. Let me be among the first to congratulate you warmly.
She takes his hand.
Oh.
Come, Sylvia, dear.
Lady Vivash and Sylvia go out by the window.
Mr. Silchester, why have you done this?
I'm desperately sorry. Upon my soul, I am.
Mrs. Boyle-Chewton to Bargus.
They tell me you are not well.
Bargus shakes his head helplessly. She gives him the bunch of flowers.
Those are for you.
He takes them and sinks into a chair, she regarding him fondly.
Mr. Silchester?
My dear Edith, it is of no use to beat about the bush any further. The fact is, Mr. Bargus, who mistrusts his own strength of mind, has begged me to be his spokesman. Edith, Mr. Bargus continues to entertain the highest admiration, the most profound respect for you, but
what, Dudley?
But he feels it due to himself and to you to say that the events of last night were based upon an entire misunderstanding.
The events of last night?
The proposal of marriage.
The proposal of marriage? Mr. Bargus desires to withdraw it?
Well, he places himself entirely in your hands. In point of fact, dear Edith, Mr. Bargus intended to propose for Rhoda. His expressions were ambiguous, and he thought he was doing so when he wasn't. Phew, I hope I make myself perfectly clear.
Mrs. Boyle-Chewton, after a slight pause.
Quite. So far as I'm concerned, the matter has been a momentary distraction, nothing more. For Rhoda? Oh, yes, just so. Dudley, thank Mr. Bargus for his promptness. These mistakes are better corrected at the moment. It is an amusing error.
Giving way.
Oh, what a fool I've been!
She sinks into a chair and sobs violently. Bargus rises, and Dudley energetically waves him towards the door.
Go away. Don't say anything. Get out.
Oh, I should like to say before I go that Mrs. Boyle-Chewton's magnanimous behaviour under the present distressing circumstances increases my admiration for the generosity of her disposition. She is a noble woman.
Get out.
Many plans of atonement have suggested themselves to me during the lonely hours of an entirely sleepless night. One of them was to place all my worldly possessions at Miss Boyle-Chewton's disposal for charitable distribution. In such a case, I should desire the Asylum for Idiots to participate largely.
Get out.
I am about to act upon your suggestion. Good day. I desire to say, finally, that at 5:30 this morning I arrived at the conclusion that I am peculiarly unfitted for public life. Tomorrow I apply for the stewardship of the Chiltern Hundreds.
Dudley moves towards the bell.
Thank you. I'll let myself out. Mr. Silchester, I shall remain in town until Tuesday, in case you should desire to pursue the matter to a dreadful issue. Good morning.
He goes out quietly.
Oh, Dudley, take me to my room. I shall never hold up my head again.
Yes, you will, tomorrow.
I've been false to my principles.
Well, everybody is. You can get some new ones.
There's something wrong with us women. With all our struggles for equality, we are so weak, so incomplete.
Of course you are. You'll never make one boot a pair if you polish it till doomsday.
He takes her out as Sylvia's voice is heard outside. Sylvia, appearing outside window.
Remain there, Mamma. I'll fetch your hat and a shawl.
Running across to the door.
I wish he would make haste.
She runs out at the door as Rhoda enters by the window, watching her.
She is not to know, then? Her little butterfly wings are not to be fluttered even with the knowledge that her sweetheart's love is very second-hand. Why should everything be so smooth for her and so rough for me? Why shouldn't I tell her the truth?
Sylvia re-enters carrying a hat and shawl. Rhoda, intercepting her.
Sylvia?
I must hurry with these to Mamma.
Look here, I want to speak to you. Don't you think it is time that you made people regard you as something better than a doll? Do you think that it is just that your mother and your friends should keep you ignorant of what concerns you more than anybody in the world?
I am very happy. A great many things I dare say I don't know. If people love me or like me, that's all I want to know.
But don't you want to know everything concerning the people you love? Say, for instance, the man you love.
Are you speaking of Mr. Ira Lee?
Who is Mr. Ira Lee?
Mr. Philip Leicester. He bears 2 names, both good and honourable.
You do know, then, all about him?
All about him.
I see. You are more a woman than I thought you. Your cloak, Sylvia, is not so much gossamer as good waterproof. They have taught you, I suppose, that you ought to be well satisfied with second-hand love, when the lover is a poet.
What do you mean?
Your mother is waiting for her hat and shawl.
Rhonda, tell me.
There is nothing more to tell. You know that Mr. Lee Leicester had a sweetheart years ago. You know, I presume, who the lady was. Voilà tout. I thought you were too confiding, or I shouldn't have bothered you.
Sylvia puts the hat and shawl upon the writing table, tremblingly.
You are mistaken. They have told me nothing. Rhonda, what is it?
Oh, I'd rather not tell you.
You must, now. What is it?
Promise to forget that it came from me if I do tell you. Never to mention my name.
Yes, I promise.
Lady Vivash appears at window.
Be quick. A sweetheart years ago. Who was she?
I suppose the past tense applies. She is not dead, you know.
Lady Vivash enters the room.
Far away, then?
No, indeed.
Not near us, in our own country.
Quite in our own country. Very near us.
Who is she?
Lady Vivash utters a suppressed cry.
I wonder you don't guess. Lady Vivash.
Oh, no!
Sylvia!
Mother!
Lady Vivash clasps Sylvia in her arms, but the girl slips from her and falls on her knees at her mother's feet, burying her face in her hands. Lady Vivash to Rhoda.
Leave me with my child, please.
Rhoda takes a step or two and moves her lips as if trying to speak. But her eyes meet Lady Vivash's, her head droops, and she goes slowly and silently through the window and out of sight.
GaunceMr, look at me.
She stoops and gently raises Sylvia.
Look at me, dear, your mother.
Is it true?
Lady Vivash shrinks a little, then stands with her face averted, holding Sylvia's hand.
Yes.
Sylvia goes back with a faint cry, but Lady Vivash catches her in her arms and kisses her passionately.
Oh, listen, listen, listen. It is strange, but nothing else. There is no need for you to give even a second thought to a foolish accident. The last weak thread in the remnant of the old past. Sylvia, Sylvia.
Sylvia sinks into a chair, staring forward vacantly.
Mother.
Lady Vivash kneels to Sylvia, taking her hands and clasping them tremblingly.
Oh, my darling, my darling. Don't look like that. There is nothing in this accident that should trouble you. He is yours, heart and soul. Years and years ago he may have had a passing fancy, but the girl he liked is now a rigid, prosaic, strong-minded creature whom some men laugh and jeer at. You'll make me believe I've wronged you. Kiss me, your poor mother who would let you trample on her to save you a moment's pain. My darling, my darling.
I haven't heard the name of your boy lover till now. Philip Leicester. Philip Leicester.
You're right. He was only a boy lover, and love to a lad is a toy, nothing more. When he is tired of it, he breaks it and flings it away. You are loved by a man.
I see the reason he changed his life and his name, to try to forget everything, himself, his love.
And he did forget. He did forget.
Yes, but, Mother dear, you have not forgotten.
Lady Vivash, rising aghast.
Sylvia!
Do you think I don't remember the story of your love as you told it to me one day when you were in trouble, when you said to me, Sylvia, a woman's first love is her religion? Ah, I remember so well.
Lady Vivash, sinking into a chair.
Oh, my child, my child.
Sylvia, going to Lady Vivash.
Forgive me, Mother. It is I who have brought trouble upon you, not you upon me.
Kneeling at her feet, Lady Vivash sobs bitterly.
Hush, Mother dear, Mother dear. I was selfish ever to think of leaving you. We'll never part, dear. We'll never part.
Oh, what have I done to you? What have I done to you? What have I done to you?
Dudley enters. Lady Vivash advancing to meet Dudley.
Dudley.
Here is Philip, Mary.
Philip.
The two women look at each other. Sylvia walks slowly to Lady Vivash, kisses her, and goes softly out at the window.
Mary, Sylvia knows?
Lady Vivash bows her head.
Tell him to come to me.
Dudley goes to the door and beckons to Lee, and then goes and stands outside the window as Lee enters.
Lady Vivash.
She knows. My child knows.
Oh.
Help me. Help me.
Tell me how. Tell me.
You do love her, truly. You do. You do.
I do.
Then by your love for that girl who has never known an unhappy moment until today, out of pity for the wretched woman who wounded you years ago.
Ah, Mary, hush.
Yes, out of compassion for me, do your utmost to remove the sorrow which has fallen upon my child.
Lee makes a despairing gesture.
Ah, don't hesitate. Try to comprehend the position in which I am. It is no longer mother and daughter with Sylvia and myself. It is woman and woman. Ah, don't hesitate.
What do you bid me do?
Burying his face in his hands.
Convince her that your love for her is the real love of your life. Declare to her that your old boyish infatuation was nothing but a flame which you smothered with a stamp of your foot. You must win back her trust and confidence. You must make her happy again. You hear me? You must. You must.
And then, Lady Vivash, what then? Is there no future to reckon for? Are there no ghosts to rise, no seeds of distrust to break their husks, spring up and bear fruit? What of the future?
The future? Listen, Philip Lister. I love my child. She is all I live for now. But if I could know she was happy, I could be content to live out the rest of my life away from her, never to disturb her, never to break in upon her peace, never by a sight of my face to make her think.
Oh, Lady Vivash.
You understand what I mean. If you can make her happy, I will go away from you both. The man she loves is more to a girl than the mother who loves her, and I will pay a mother's penalty. A little heavier than most mothers pay, but I will pay it to the full.
Faintly clutching at the back of a chair, then recovering herself and holding out her hand to Lee.
Philip Lister, won't you help me?
Lee, looking at her distractedly and irresolutely, then taking her hand.
Yes, I will help you.
You will do your utmost.
I will do my utmost. I promise.
Oh, I thank you.
Hush, hush.
Yes, I thank you. I bless you. May I go and find Sylvia now?
Yes, yes.
Wait then, wait.
Going slowly to the window and catching at the curtain, she sees the bracelet on her wrist. Then, turning to look at Lee, who stands staring forward, she removes the bracelet and creeps towards him.
The bracelet.
Lee looks up with a start and takes the bracelet which she hands him with averted face. Then she goes out. Lee, seeing Dudley outside.
Dudley.
Dudley approaches.
Give me your hand.
They grip hands.
Old friend, say goodbye to me.
Philip, what are you going to do?
My utmost to heal the sorrow I have brought upon Mary and Sylvia. I have come into their lives to their cost. To my cost, I will go out of their lives today as if I had died at this very hour.
Does Mary know?
Not yet. Tell her, Dudley, that I have kept my promise, that I have done my utmost.
Oh, Philip, is there no way but this?
None. You know it, Dudley. Once my shadow is taken from the lives of these two women, there will be light again. I pray to time to do the rest. Time will bless some worthier men than I with Sylvia's sweet companionship, and then the first laugh from Sylvia's lips will wake Mary from her long dream. You will be near them still, Dudley, always.
Always. I'm too old a watchdog to know any voice but Mary's.
They shake hands.
God bless you. This is the only way.
Bows his head on Dudley's shoulder.
They are coming.
Let me see them once more together. Let me see them when they know that I have gone. Tell them.
Lee goes out at one window as Lady Vivash and Sylvia enter at another without seeing him.
Dudley, Philip has something to tell Sylvia, which I want her to hear from his lips alone. Where is he? Let us find him. Come.
Going towards the door. Dudley, stopping her.
Mary? Sylvia?
Dudley?
I have some news to break to you. We shall see Philip no more. He has gone.
Lady Vivash and Sylvia meet each other's eyes with a fixed look.
Mary, Philip asks me to tell you that he has kept his promise. He has done his utmost.
Lady Vivash goes to Sylvia, and they tenderly embrace. Dudley goes to the window and looks out. Then Lee re-enters silently, looks at the two women, grips Dudley's hand, and disappears. The end. End of Act 3. End of The Weaker Sex by Arthur Wing PINERO.